the first functional forum, I had to have Dr. Doni Wilson here, who is Mark Bertolini's naturopath. And I'd like to ask Doni to come up, and we're just going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be the treating the big boys, the Aetna CEO's naturopath. Thanks for being here, Doni. Wow, really appreciate you. I'm going to give you a mic. Oh, yeah! Mr. Big Stuff, Mark Bertolini. Right, that was the first bit over. Doni, it is awesome to have you here. You know, when I heard Mark speak, I was extremely excited about the future of this profession and extremely excited to, you know, to hear the work that you're doing. How did it all sort of come about? How did you end up working with him?
You know, he just came in my office like a normal patient.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild. And so it's pretty cool when you're just talking to a person and you realize who they are. And he's such an easygoing person to talk with. I immediately was so excited to talk with him. You know how it is when you meet with a patient who gets that they want to know what's going on in their body and what they can do to improve their health? It's exciting, right? It's like, this is the kind of person, before you even know they're Mark Bertolini, you know this is a person who's going to really be able to benefit from our medicine.
Now, did you Google him before he came in? Like, who is this guy coming in?
I didn't.
I just have to say, like, potentially, when you guys saw what this event was about, you might have thought that this was going to be just one massive HIPAA violation, where we're just going to talk about Mark Bertolini's history. I'm not going to ask you about his, like, you know, his bowel movements or, you know, anything like that. But I'm interested to find out, because I was just reading your book, and you talk, I thought one of the things really interesting is you talk about, the book's called The Stress Remedy, and it's awesome. I was actually just reading here, and one of the things that really you mentioned at the beginning is basically, there are sort of two types of people who are trying to deal with stress. There's the sort of what you call a superhero fantasy, which is basically where people are looking at, where people are thinking that if they just work a little bit harder, they can get over stress. I'm guessing that you put the CEOs in that category, not the other category, which is the Garden of Eden, which people, if they just find their bliss, they're going to get over stress. So which category do it's not just Mark, there's other CEOs that you're working with, right?
Absolutely. And by the way, they're not just men.
Okay.
Women too.
Women CEOs as well?
Absolutely.
I certainly believe it. And you know, I was going to say the big boys and the big girls, but I just haven't had success in my life calling any woman big. And I thought that was definitely going to backfire. So I just went with treating the big boys. But well, you understand that, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you, James. I'm with you. And a lot of people know that I specialized in women's health care for a large part of my practice. Okay. I am trained as a midwife.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it's working with women in labor that really taught me a lot about stress and what it is to be optimal under stress. Because it's not like, I mean, the stress remedy is not to eliminate stress.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what the superhero or sometimes the Garden of Eden is like, just to think that we're somehow going to transcend stress, or we're going to be superheroes and be able to charge through it without it affecting us. And those are those fantasies that we often all fall into either one of at some point.
You know, 9 months ago, I was at the business end of a home birth, so I know what stress looks like, and you know, I think that's an interesting thing. So, how do CEOs think differently, and how do you see natural medicine fitting into the future of? Because we have again an interesting system in America where you're actually healthcare is being paid for and delivered through a company, which is unique to America, really, sort of. How do you see that the potential of something like that to really put this type of medicine at the forefront is through corporate wellness?
Well, one thing is that, and I think this is partly where Mark was drawn to what I do in my practice, is because, you know, CEOs are thinking beyond themselves. They're thinking about how their health affects their business. Okay. And they really get that. Yeah. So, you know, the more that a person is coming to us saying, what can I do to improve not only my health, but the health of my employees? Now the mission of their business is actually about health, even though that's not their business model. They're very invested in health. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see going forward in healthcare, especially according to what Mark Bertolini has shared, is that it's about health management. And people are becoming more invested in health as a way of being.
Yeah.
And the more that, and of course that fits perfectly with what we do as functional practitioners and naturopathic practitioners, is that we're all about helping people live healthy.
Yeah.
And therefore being more productive.
One of the things that I got from your book, which goes along with that, is what you called this sort of like there's the book. Let me hold it up, just like Jon Stewart does it. Look, get it here now. He normally does that at the end, Doni, and the guest certainly doesn't grab it.
Oh, sorry.
But let me ask you this. So, one of the things that we're going to be talking about all the way through this evening is this shift in medicine from like this patriarchal concept, where the doctor is telling the patient what to do and the patient is doing it because they're scared of the doctor, which is the old model, right? And that model, I'm sorry, is gone. The internet is killing that model and has killed that model already. The patient knows just about as much as their condition as the doctor. So we need to get into the situation where you're actually inspiring the patient to want to be well, right? That's the really key thing, is inspiring them to actually do their thing. And so you talk about this ladder of awareness where essentially it starts with compliance, but then it moves towards more self-awareness. These are all doctors here, practitioners. I'm sure they're interested in kicking this process on with their patients. How do you do that? How do you get people to go from a place where they're starting, just they want to know what to do, to actually getting to a point where they actually can feel it for themselves?
I think it starts from the very beginning of the conversation with the patient, and even just sitting down with them, understanding that we're partners in their health, not coming in with just here's what you have to do and here's what you have to take in order to improve your health. And this is what my goal in writing this book is to have patients really also understand their bodies. And we have to that's our job, is translate the science so that they can understand their bodies. Because when they can understand what happens when they have a carbohydrate and their blood sugar levels end up on a roller coaster, and it's going to affect their mood and their energy level and their focus and their sleep, they're going to make different choices. And it's not just the CEOs who are interested in that. I think the more we can really present information and translate the science so that people understand what their bodies need and have awareness what's going on in their body, then they get to that point where, the analogy I use in the book is like being a basketball player, where you're playing the game without thinking about each step you're taking in each play.
I really like that analogy. It's a great analogy for this process that they're going through. So they come in, you're telling them what to do at the beginning, they're starting to gain more self-awareness. How do you balance the fact that, what you're educating them on is that this is a synergistic system. Synergy is part 3. And that's one of the things, is that, it's very easy to educate patients about allopathic medicine, because you just have this issue, you take this drug. Whereas what we're talking about here is educating them on a synergistic system that's happening. How do you do that? Because it's complicated.
It is complicated. It's simple in that we're a lot of times patients get that, what's going on in their digestive tract is somehow related to their mood or the headache or what's going on their skin. But, I think it's a matter of just saying that to them. It's your body's interconnected. It's all happening in one body. It must be somehow connected. And that's why I bring it back to this concept of stress. When I've been researching stress for over 10 years, and what I've noticed from the very beginning is that research shows that cortisol, which we all know is a major stress hormone, affects 4 other major systems, including all the endocrine system, neurotransmitter levels, digestion, and the immune system. Now, those 4 systems, if stress is going to affect those 4 systems, it's going to relate to the symptoms that show. The more that we help patients understand the symptoms are just the indicators of what's going on at a deeper level, then people start to get that things are interconnected. And they can connect the dots and understand the map of how their wellness then starts by working on this bigger picture of starting with diet. How can you feed yourself or sleep in a way that stabilizes cortisol so that these symptoms don't occur.
And what are some easy analogies? Because it's not easy to get your head around. You know, all these different systems. You know, most people just know the knee bone's connected to the shin bone, and that's about it. Like,
Oh, I worked a lot about that in the book because, you know, a lot of times we want to go toward like a car as an analogy.
Yeah.
But that's not exactly, or a computer, but it didn't quite fit. What I ended up coming to was an analogy of a house where if say a window is open, it's going to start to affect the environment in the whole house. Or if someone doesn't take out the garbage,
yeah,
it's going to affect the environment in the whole house, and you might see it in a different location of the house and not realize, oh, it was the garbage there. So the more that people start to realize our body is an environment, and you change one piece of that, whether that's by being exposed to toxins or foods that are creating an immune response, now you've changed the environment, and your body's going to have to adapt in some way.
yeah. That adaptation to stress, I think, is really interesting, and I look forward to hearing a lot more about it because, you know, people get, again, very fixated on the adrenals and particular organs, but this is a fiercely, interestingly adaptive system that's happening all the time, and I think more of what we're starting to see is that. But it's a complicated system to teach to physicians, and so, you know, I think finding ways to make it easy to teach to physicians or otherwise, because functional medicine starts with maybe systems biology, but it's going further than that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. And it's also going further than just, you know, to redefine stress, because stress is not just what we usually think of. It's not just a deadline or event or even a crisis. It's even the minor stresses that come with missing sleep or missing meals. These things add up, and the body has to adapt. So the more people start to understand that it's not about eliminating stress.
Yeah.
It's about how do we, you know, make choices on a daily basis that help our bodies be optimal under stress. And so, you know, to me, it comes back to a lot of the things that, you know, we as practitioners recommend, you know, coming back to food as medicine, how to feed ourselves in a way that support our bodies to be healthy.
That's awesome. So you've been doing this a long time. Your book's called The Stress Remedy. You're helping people with stress. I think this is the most important. I was listening to Deepak Chopra 2 days ago at the ABC Home and Carpet, and they're doing some work, and he said that if people were managing their stress properly, sleeping properly, and having healthy relationships, they were already finding that telomere length was jumping 40%. And I don't think there's any, like, nutritional supplement that has that. So, like, the real work is doing that. Like, that is the real work, and the supplements and everything else, that's, you know, beneficial to a certain point if you can help them to get compliance and move them along the process. But this is the real work that we need to get to. I think the book has a lot of tools to be able to do that. I really appreciate you coming to share more about it, and, you know, I think that, you know, the work that you're doing with these people is a lever for serious change. Corporate wellness, you know, we have the situation of corporate wellness right here, and I think a lot of good is going to come from it, from your work and others. What would you say to a doctor that wants to work with these kind of people but just hasn't found those people walking into their office right now? Do you think going and prospecting people with issues like that would be a good starting point to try and work with companies?
Potentially, for sure.
Or are you going to take all the CEOs in New York? You'll have to go to
no.
There's a lot.
No, I think a lot of it is just communicating what we do, because the more that I find myself writing about it and communicating about it, they're going to find you.
Yeah.
You know, because they're looking for it. They're looking for people who are going to help them be healthy and successful. They get that that's important already. So if you just let yourself be known, they're going to find you.
Perfect. Dr. Doni Wilson, it's been a pleasure having you. Thanks very much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you for having me, James.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. So